She went on a blind date with a poor man unaware. He was a millionaire CEO in disguise. Hello everyone. Before we begin today's story, I have a small favor to ask. Please hit subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you never miss our channel's new videos. It's quick, free, and the best way to support us in bringing you more dramatic stories. Your support means the world to us. Where are you watching from? Drop your city or country in the comments below. Thank you very much. Now, let's get back to our main character. The rain had been falling since dawn, a steady drizzle that painted New York in shades of gray. Inside a cozy corner cafe on Fifth Avenue, Emily sat by the window, her fingers tracing tiny circles on her coffee cup. Her hair was still damp from the walk, her shoes squeaked softly on the tiled floor, and her phone screen glowed with a single message from her best friend. "Don't back out this time. He's kind, humble, and totally not a jerk." Emily smiled weakly. Blind dates had never been her thing, especially after the last one ended with a man explaining how much he made before even asking her name. She checked her reflection in the window's second-hand dress, slightly frizzy hair, nervous smile. "You've got this," she whispered to herself. The door chimed. A man stepped in, shaking off the rain from his shoulders. His coat was worn, the kind you'd find in a thrift shop. His jeans were faded, and his shoes had seen better days. Not exactly the financial consultant Jenny said he was. Still, his eyes, warm, unsure, kind, made her stay seated when he looked around as if searching for someone. Their gazes met. He hesitated before walking over. "Emily?" he asked softly. She blinked. "Yes, hi. You must be Mark?" He smiled, shy but genuine. "That's me." He slid into the chair across from her, setting down a soggy paper bag. "Sorry about the look. My umbrella didn't make it through the storm." She laughed, tension easing. "Don't worry. I'm just glad someone showed up this time." He chuckled, rubbing his palms together for warmth. The waitress approached, taking their order. Emily offered to pay just coffee and a muffin, barely $10, but the man's surprised look caught her off guard. "You don't have to," he said, voice low. "It's fine. I insist." She shrugged. "It's just coffee. I've got this." He gave her a look she couldn't quite read, grateful, almost moved. As the rain pattered outside, they began to talk. She told him about losing her job at the diner last month, about her mom's hospital bills, about painting in the park when she needed to breathe. He listened without interrupting, nodding slowly. "That sounds tough," he murmured. "But you still seem hopeful." She smiled faintly. "Hope's free. Still got that, at least." He laughed softly. "That's rare." When she asked about him, he hesitated, glancing at the dripping window. "I'm between things," he said vaguely. "Just trying to figure out what matters." His hands were rough, nails clean but unpolished. Not the kind of hands she'd expect from someone who worked in finance. Still, something about him felt real, in a way most people didn't. Minutes turned into an hour. By the time the rain lightened, she found herself laughing easily, even forgetting the awkwardness of a blind date. The waitress brought the check, and Emily reached for her wallet. He looked uneasy. "I'll get it next time," he said quickly. "Promise." "Next time?" she teased. He blushed, smiling. "If I'm lucky." She handed over a $10 bill, her last one, and said lightly, "Consider it a loan, then." He took the receipt, eyes landing on her signature E. Brookson for a second. He froze as if engraving it in memory. When they stepped outside, the city smelled of wet asphalt and coffee. The wind caught her hair, and he offered her his jacket. "It's okay," she said. "You'll freeze." "I'll survive," he replied. "You already did me a favor." She hesitated before taking it, warmth seeping through the worn fabric. He looked at her like she was the first real person he'd met in a long time. "Thank you, Emily," he said quietly, "for treating me like someone." She tilted her head, puzzled. "What else would I treat you like?" He didn't answer, just smiled, stepped into the rain, and disappeared into the crowd. Emily stood there a moment, clutching his jacket, wondering why a stranger's kindness could make her chest ache the way it did. She didn't know that the man she'd just had coffee with wasn't poor at all, but a millionaire CEO in disguise, testing the one thing money couldn't buy: sincerity. The next morning, the sun slipped through thin curtains in Emily's tiny apartment. The paint on the window frame was chipped, and the radiator clanked softly, struggling to warm the space. She sat on the edge of her bed, clutching her phone, half expecting a text that would never come. The man from the cafe had vanished into the rain the night before, leaving behind a borrowed jacket and a strange ache she could not name. She inhaled the faint scent of coffee still clinging to the fabric. It smelled like something safe, something she missed. Life, however, had no patience for daydreams. Rent was due in 3 days. Her mother's medical bills were stacked on the counter like silent accusations. Emily folded the jacket carefully, placed it over the chair, and left for her second interview that week. By the time she reached the downtown district, her shoes were damp again. The sign on the glass door read, "Carter Foundation, Building Hope Together." She remembered reading about it once. A nonprofit helping unemployed families. She thought, maybe they needed admin staff, someone like her. Inside, everything smelled of new carpet and fresh coffee. The receptionist greeted her kindly and handed her a clipboard. "You must be Emily Brooks, right? Please wait in the lounge. Mr. Carter will meet you shortly." Emily froze. Carter? She glanced around at the framed photographs on the walls, people smiling at food drives, children receiving backpacks, volunteers handing out meals. And then, in one picture near the doorway, there he was. The man from the cafe. Same eyes, same smile, but in a crisp black suit. Beneath the frame was a brass plate. David Carter, founder and CEO. Her breath hitched. The man she thought was broke, the man she had given her last $10 to, was standing in every photo like a ghost of her own misunderstanding. The door to the office opened, and there he was in real-life hair combed back, tie neatly knotted, every trace of the worn coat gone. "Emily," he said, warmth flickering behind the formal tone. "Please come in." She stood stiffly, her voice trembling. You are Mr. Carter?" "I am," he said gently, "but I hope you still call me Mark." Her cheeks flushed. "Was that your real name?" "Middle name," he admitted with a half-smile. "I like how you said it." She crossed her arms. "You lied to me." "I did not lie," he said quietly. "I just did not tell you everything. I was doing field research. I wanted to understand how people live when money is not an answer. You treated me like a person, not a project. That matters." She looked down, ashamed, confused, angry. "You could have told me. If I had," he said softly, "you would have treated me differently." He gestured to the chair across from his desk. "Please, sit." Emily hesitated but obeyed. The office was elegant yet modest. On his desk sat a single-framed photo of volunteers and a stack of notebooks. He handed her a folder. "You applied for the community outreach position. I read your file. I think you would be perfect." She blinked. "You are offering me a job? After I accused you of lying?" "After you showed me honesty," he corrected. "You are the kind of person this foundation needs. Someone who understands struggle, not just statistics." Emily's throat tightened. "I do not want charity." He smiled faintly. "Good, because this is not charity. It is purpose." Silence hung between them, the kind that hums with something unspoken. She exhaled slowly, fighting the swirl of pride and disbelief. "Why me?" she asked. "Because," he said, leaning forward slightly, "you are the only person I have met in a long time who gave without expecting anything back." Emily looked down at the folder, then up at him. "I do not even know if I can do this." "You can," he said. "You already did. You helped me remember why I started all of this." Outside, the city buzzed with ordinary life. But inside that room, everything felt rewritten. The girl who had once spent her last $10 for kindness now faced the man who would change her future. And though she did not know it yet, this was only the beginning of the story she would never forget. Emily started her new job at the Carter Foundation the following week. Her first morning felt like walking into another world. The lobby was bright, filled with plants and the quiet hum of conversation. Volunteers carried clipboards. A group of interns huddled over laptops. And somewhere in the back, she could hear the faint rhythm of a printer spitting out schedules for the upcoming community event. Emily wore her best blouse, the one she had ironed 3 times just to make sure the creases were perfect. When she saw David standing near the entrance, greeting the team with his usual calm confidence, her chest tightened. He looked every bit the man in those framed photos, now polished, composed, untouchable. And yet, when his eyes found hers, his smile softened. "Morning, Emily," he said warmly. "Did you find your desk all right?" She nodded, clutching her notebook a little too tightly. "Yes, thank you. It is a lot nicer than the diner counter." He chuckled quietly. and for a moment the awkwardness between them eased. As the hours passed, she learned the ropes quickly, managing schedules, answering calls, and helping organize the kindness drive, a project that would distribute food and clothing across several city shelters. David stopped by her station often, offering small tips, never hovering too close but never far enough for her to forget his presence. During lunch breaks, she caught him helping volunteers load boxes into the van, sleeves rolled up, tie loosened. He worked like he had something to prove, like the title of CEO meant nothing compared to the cause itself. It confused her. She had met rich men before, men who treated generosity like performance. But David, he meant it. Still, part of her guarded heart whispered that people like him did not stay genuine for long. Late one afternoon, she stayed behind to finish inventory in the storage room. The lights flickered softly above and she hummed to herself while counting donated blankets. The door opened quietly and David's voice drifted in. "You should not be working this late." She looked up, startled. "I just wanted to finish the list. We are short by 20 blankets, and I did not want it to mess up tomorrow's report." He leaned against the doorframe, watching her with a small smile. "You do not need to prove yourself, Emily. You already belong here." The words caught her off guard. "I am just trying to do my part." "You are doing more than that," he said, stepping closer. "You remind everyone why this foundation exists." She laughed softly, shaking her head. "You talk like I am saving the world. Maybe just a piece of it," he said. Their eyes met for a moment longer than either expected. Then the fluorescent light buzzed, breaking the spell. Emily cleared her throat. "I should lock up soon." He nodded, but his gaze lingered, thoughtful. "Before you go," he said, reaching into his jacket pocket, "I believe this belongs to you." He held out the same $10 bill she had given him that rainy night, now pressed neatly inside a clear frame. Her name, scrawled in blue ink at the bottom, was still visible. Emily blinked, emotions tightening in her throat. "You kept it?" "Of course," he said softly. "It reminded me that kindness does not have to be grand to be life-changing." She swallowed hard. "You really do not have to give this back." "I am not," he said. "I am giving it meaning." He set the framed bill on the shelf beside her box of blankets, like an artifact of something sacred. Silence filled the space again, gentle and full. "You know," she said finally, "I am still not sure what to think about all this. You pretending to be poor, testing people." He sighed, his expression turning serious. "It was not meant to be a test. I just forgot how real people live. You reminded me." She nodded slowly. "Just promise me something, David. If you want to understand kindness, do not disguise yourself to find it. Just live it." He smiled, the corners of his eyes softening. "Fair deal." As they stepped out of the building together, the city lights shimmered off the wet pavement, and for the first time since that stormy night, Emily did not feel small in his world. She felt seen. And somewhere deep down, a quiet voice told her that this story between them was far from over. The weeks that followed felt like a quiet storm inside Emily's heart. Every day at the Carter Foundation began with the same rhythm: morning briefings, lists, phone calls, but somewhere between those ordinary hours, her life started to change. She had begun to smile more, not because things were easier, but because she felt like she belonged somewhere again. David was everywhere yet never intrusive. He worked beside everyone else, wore rolled-up sleeves, and carried boxes when the volunteers needed help. But he also carried something else now, an unspoken tension whenever Emily walked into the room. It was in the way his eyes lingered a moment too long, or how his voice softened whenever he spoke her name. She felt it too, that pull she did not want to admit. Still, she kept her distance. She reminded herself that men like him lived in glass towers while women like her just cleaned the windows. One Friday afternoon, they visited a shelter together to prepare for the upcoming charity gala. The shelter was small but full of laughter, children chasing one another through narrow halls, and the smell of freshly baked bread from the kitchen. Emily knelt beside an elderly woman, helping her fill a donation form. The woman smiled, her wrinkled hand brushing Emily's cheek. "You are too kind, dear. Do you have someone special waiting for you?" Emily laughed softly. "Just my mother and a pile of overdue bills." The woman chuckled. "Then you are rich in love, not money. That lasts longer." When they drove back to the office, the city was bathed in sunset gold. Inside the car, silence hung between them, thick but comfortable. David finally spoke, his tone thoughtful. "You were incredible today. The way people open up to you, it is something I cannot teach." Emily looked out the window. "Maybe because they know I am one of them." That is exactly why you are special, he said quietly. She turned to face him, surprised by the sincerity in his voice. David, she began carefully, I do not want this to get complicated. You are my boss. I need this job. He nodded slowly. And I need people like you to remind me what we are working for. Their eyes met again, and for a moment, the world outside disappeared. The car stopped at a red light, rain beginning to fall in faint drops against the windshield. You know, he said after a pause, when I first started this foundation, I thought money could fix everything. It cannot. People do. She smiled faintly. Now you sound like me. Maybe you are rubbing off on me, he said with a grin. She rolled her eyes but could not help laughing. The light turned green, and the car moved forward, the rain tapping harder now, a rhythm that matched the unspoken feelings building between them. The next morning, the office buzzed with preparations for the annual gala. Volunteers were decorating the main hall, arranging banners and floral centerpieces. Emily was in charge of coordinating the presentation slides that would highlight the foundation's milestones. She stood on a ladder adjusting a projector when she heard his voice below. Careful, that looks unstable. I am fine, she said, reaching higher. The next second, her foot slipped. She gasped, bracing for the fall, but strong arms caught her before she hit the ground. She opened her eyes to find herself inches away from David's face. His heartbeat thudded against her shoulder. I told you it was unstable, he whispered, breathless. She laughed nervously, standing upright. Guess I should listen next time. For a moment, neither moved. The hum of voices around them faded, replaced by something fragile and real. He cleared his throat and stepped back. I will have maintenance handle that. No more heroics. Yes, sir, she teased, but her cheeks burned. That evening, as she packed her things, she noticed a small note on her desk written in his handwriting. It read, "Thank you for making this place feel human again." She stared at it for a long moment, heart fluttering in her chest. Somewhere between kindness and chaos, something had begun, something she was not ready to name but could no longer ignore. The night of the Carter Foundation Gala arrived, and the entire city seemed to glow. The ballroom of the Grand Oak Hotel shimmered under crystal chandeliers, tables draped in ivory linen, and golden lights reflected off every glass. Guests in suits and gowns filled the room with the hum of polite laughter and the clinking of champagne flutes. Emily had never been in a place like this before. She stood near the stage, her hands slightly trembling as she adjusted the microphone stand for the speakers. The soft fabric of her borrowed dress brushed against her knees, and she caught her reflection in the mirrored wall, a woman trying to look like she belonged. David spotted her across the room. He was surrounded by investors and journalists, his tuxedo perfectly tailored, his expression calm yet distracted. When their eyes met, a faint smile touched his lips, but she quickly looked away, reminding herself that she was staff, not a guest. The event began with speeches and applause, each voice praising the foundation's achievements. Emily moved through the crowd quietly, ensuring every detail went smoothly. Halfway through the evening, David stepped onto the stage. The spotlight hit him as he began to speak about kindness, compassion, and second chances. A few months ago, he said, I met someone who reminded me that wealth means nothing if it cannot be shared. She gave when she had almost nothing, and that act changed everything for me. His words echoed in the room. Emily froze near the back, realizing who he was talking about. Her heart pounded, and she wished she could disappear. The guests murmured softly, curious. David continued, She reminded me that true generosity is not measured by how much we give, but by how much heart we put into giving. Tonight, I want to honor the spirit of that kindness. The projector behind him flickered to life, showing photos from their community work, the shelters, the volunteers, the food drives. And then, unexpectedly, one image filled the screen. Emily, laughing as she handed a blanket to a little boy at the shelter. The audience applauded warmly. Emily felt heat rise to her cheeks. When the spotlight found her, she shook her head slightly, mouthing, David, no. But he only smiled and said, Ladies and gentlemen, please thank Emily Brooks for reminding us what real compassion looks like. Applause erupted. She stood frozen, overwhelmed, both proud and embarrassed. After the event, she slipped out to the balcony to breathe. The night air was cool, carrying the sound of traffic and distant music. She leaned on the railing, staring at the city lights below when the door opened behind her. David stepped out quietly, loosening his tie. You ran away from your own moment, he said gently. She turned to him, half laughing. That was not my moment. It was yours. No, he said softly. You gave it to me. I just shared it back. She looked at him, emotions swirling in her chest. You should not have called me out like that. I do not belong in that spotlight. You belong there more than anyone, he said. Emily, you changed how I see everything. The sincerity in his tone made her look away. You barely know me. I know enough, he said, stepping closer. I know that you care more about people than appearances, and I know I have not stopped thinking about you since that day in the cafe. Her breath caught. David, I am not asking for anything, he interrupted softly. I just needed you to know. The silence between them was electric, filled with all the things neither dared to say. The city lights shimmered below like a sea of stars. Finally, she whispered, You are impossible. He smiled, a little sad. Maybe. But you make impossible things feel worth trying. She laughed quietly, the sound trembling in the night air. When they finally returned inside, the gala was ending, the crowd thinning out. But something had shifted, something real, fragile, and just beginning to bloom between them, waiting for its moment to be named. The days after the gala passed like a blur of emotions Emily could not quite name. The applause, the lights, and the way David had looked at her that night, it all lingered, soft but unshakable. At the foundation, things returned to routine, yet nothing felt the same. Every time she saw him walking down the hallway or heard his voice from the conference room, her pulse raced in a way she could not control. She told herself to stay focused, to keep her distance, but feelings had their own quiet gravity. One late afternoon, David asked her to accompany him to a follow-up meeting with donors at a construction site for the new community kitchen. The site buzzed with workers, the scent of fresh paint and concrete mixing in the air. As they walked through the half-finished building, he explained the plans with a mixture of passion and calm that made Emily see him differently, not just as a wealthy CEO, but as a man who genuinely wanted to build something meaningful. When it is done, he said, looking out the window at the city skyline, this place will feed hundreds every week, maybe even thousands, she smiled. It is hard to imagine that one cup of coffee could lead to all this. He glanced at her. Do you regret it? Giving that $10 to a stranger? Not for a second, she said. I just did not know it would change my life this much. His eyes softened. It changed mine too. For a moment neither spoke. The hum of machinery filled the silence. Emily looked down, unsure of what to do with the warmth that rushed through her chest. When they stepped outside, the sky was turning orange, the wind gentle against their faces. David's phone buzzed, and his expression shifted. I have to take this, he said quietly. She nodded and waited nearby, pretending not to listen. His tone changed, clipped and sharp. No, I said, postpone the merger meeting until I approve it. I do not care what the board says. Emily frowned slightly. This was a different version of him, cold, commanding, the kind of man who had built an empire before creating a charity. When he hung up, he caught her watching. I am sorry, he said with a tired sigh. Sometimes I forget to leave the corporate world outside these walls. You do not have to apologize, she said gently. You are still human. He looked at her like he was seeing her for the first time all over again. That is exactly what I am afraid of forgetting. They shared a quiet moment before he changed the subject. How is your mother? You mentioned her treatments. She is stable, Emily replied. Better, actually. The Foundation's health program helped more than you know, he smiled faintly. Then it is doing its job. She studied him, the way exhaustion clung to his eyes, the way responsibility seemed to weigh on his shoulders. You look like you need someone to remind you to rest. You volunteering? He teased lightly. Maybe, she said, smiling despite herself. They both laughed, the tension melting into something easy. As they drove back to the city, the radio played softly, an old love song neither of them commented on. The silence between verses felt warmer than words. When they reached her apartment building, she hesitated before getting out. David, she said quietly, I meant what I said at the gala. You do not have to prove anything. You already make a difference. He leaned slightly toward her, his voice low. You are the reason I believe that now. Her heart skipped. Good night, David. Good night, Emily. She stepped out, closing the door gently. He watched as she disappeared into the dimly lit entrance, the faintest smile on his face. As the car pulled away, David realized something he had not felt in years. Peace, the kind that had nothing to do with wealth or success. For the first time since he could remember, he wanted something no amount of money could buy. Her presence, her kindness, her quiet faith that even the richest man could still be saved by something as simple as love. The following week brought a storm neither of them expected. It began with a headline: Carter Foundation CEO accused of misusing charity funds. The morning news flashed his face across every screen in the city, twisting numbers and anonymous statements into something ugly. At first, Emily thought it had to be a mistake. David had always been transparent, dedicated, honest to a fault. But by noon, the phone lines at the foundation were flooded with reporters demanding answers, and the board called an emergency meeting. David stood at the center of the chaos, calm but pale. His eyes carried the same weight she had seen that day at the construction site. When he spoke, his voice was low but steady. Someone within our own organization leaked false data to manipulate a merger deal I blocked. They want control of the foundation's funds. Emily watched him, her heart twisting. She wanted to believe him completely, but the room was filled with whispers and doubt. Until this is resolved, one of the board members said coldly, "We suggest you step down temporarily." David nodded once, refusing to argue. When the meeting ended, he retreated to his office, the door closing softly behind him. Emily hesitated outside before finally knocking. "Come in," he said without looking up. His desk was covered in folders, statements, and printouts. He looked exhausted. "You should not be here," he murmured. "This mess will drag everyone down with it." She stepped closer. "I am not leaving. Tell me what really happened." He leaned back, rubbing his temples. A partner from the corporate side, Nathan Collins. He wanted to merge the foundation with a private investment group. I refused. So he doctored the reports to make it look like I moved charity funds into company accounts. Emily frowned. "Can you prove it?" "Not yet, but I will." His voice hardened. "The truth always comes out." She placed her hand on the desk, steady but gentle. "You do not have to fight this alone." He looked up, eyes dark with frustration. "Emily, this is not your battle." "Maybe not," she said, "but it is my faith in you, and I am not about to lose it." Her words silenced him. For a moment, all the walls around him seemed to crack. He nodded slowly. "Then I will need help, quiet help." Over the next few days, they worked late into the night, tracing every transaction, every email chain, piecing together the sabotage. Emily's eyes burned from staring at the screen, but she refused to stop. Each time she glanced at David, he looked both grateful and guilty. "You should not be doing this," he said one evening as the clock neared midnight. "I do not want your name dragged through the mud." She smiled faintly. "Too late. People already think I am the reason you got soft." He chuckled under his breath, the sound tired but genuine. "If kindness is weakness, then I guess I am guilty." Finally, Emily found a pattern in the wire transfers that pointed directly to Nathan Collins's private account. Her heart raced as she printed the document and placed it on David's desk. "This is it," she said. "This proves everything." He looked at the paper, then at her. "You just saved my life." "No," she said softly. "You saved it first." The next morning, David presented the evidence to the board. By afternoon, Nathan was suspended pending investigation, and the foundation's reputation began to recover. The news released a correction, clearing David's name. When Emily saw him again that evening, he was standing in the empty conference room, looking out at the city lights. "You should be celebrating," she said. He turned to her, a weary smile crossing his face. "I do not feel like celebrating. Not until I tell you something." He stepped closer. "Emily, through all of this, you never doubted me. Everyone else walked away, but you stayed. Why?" She hesitated, her voice barely above a whisper. "Because I know the man you are. Not the CEO, not the millionaire. Just the man who shared coffee with a stranger on a rainy day." His eyes softened. That was the day everything began. They stood there in silence, two people who had weathered a storm together, the air between them charged with something deeper than gratitude, something that neither had the courage to name yet. In the weeks that followed, calm slowly returned to the Carter Foundation. The board reinstated David officially, donors expressed renewed confidence, and the media moved on to the next scandal somewhere else. But inside David, something deeper had shifted. The storm had stripped away everything superficial, leaving only the truth about what mattered, and that truth was standing right beside him. Emily continued her work as if nothing had changed, but everyone could see it. The way her eyes lit up when he entered a room, the way his voice softened when he spoke to her. Still, neither of them dared to cross the invisible line between gratitude and something more. One evening, After a long day of planning the Open Hands expansion project, Emily sat in her cubicle surrounded by sketches and notes. The plan was her idea: mobile soup kitchens that would travel to neighborhoods most in need. David had insisted she lead it. It was your vision, he had said. You should be the one to build it. Tonight, the office was quiet, the only sound the rain tapping lightly against the windows. She was so focused that she did not hear him approach until his voice broke the silence. Still saving the world after hours? She looked up, smiling faintly. Someone has to keep up with your ambitions. He laughed softly, walking closer. I think your ambitions outgrew mine weeks ago. He stopped beside her desk, glancing over the blueprints. You did all this? With a little help, she said. But yes, this is our first mobile kitchen design. I want it to feel inviting, not like charity. He nodded, impressed. You are turning this foundation into something far greater than I ever imagined. She looked at him, eyes warm. No, David, you just gave it the space to become real. For a moment, their gazes locked. The rain outside grew heavier, a rhythmic echo against the glass. He hesitated before speaking again. Emily, do you ever think about that night, the calf? She laughed softly. Every time I pay for coffee, I keep waiting for another stranger to test my morals. I would never do that again, he said, smiling but serious. Not with you. Her heart skipped. Then what would you do? He exhaled slowly. Tell you the truth, I should have said from the beginning. That meeting you was not part of any test. It was fate, messy, unpredictable, but real. The air between them seemed to hum. David, she whispered, unsure what to do with the confession. He stepped closer, his voice barely above a breath. You saved me from myself. All the money, all the success, it meant nothing until you showed me what it means to give with heart. She blinked back tears, her throat tight. You do not need me for that. Maybe not, he said softly, but I want you for everything else. The words hung there, raw and undeniable. Before she could respond, the lights flickered from the thunderstorm outside, and the power briefly went out. In the faint glow of emergency lighting, he reached for her hand. His fingers were warm, steady. You once gave me $10 that you could not afford, he said quietly. Let me give you something that will never lose value: honesty. She looked up at him, her voice trembling. Then be honest. He nodded. I am in love with you, Emily. The world seemed to stop. The sound of rain faded into silence, replaced by the beating of her heart. She wanted to run, to think, but her body refused to move. David, she finally said, you do not understand what that means for someone like me. I do, he said. It means everything. She shook her head, tears welling in her eyes. People will talk. They will say I used you. Let them, he said firmly. The truth will speak louder. The lights came back on, bright and unforgiving, but neither of them stepped away. In that single moment, they both understood that whatever came next, judgment, whispers, or risk it, was worth it. Because for the first time, neither of them was pretending anymore. Spring arrived quietly, the kind of season that felt like a second chance. The trees outside the Carter Foundation bloomed with pale pink flowers, and the streets were alive with the sound of laughter and renewal. Months had passed since that stormy night when David had confessed his feelings, and in that time, everything seemed to find its place. The rumors that had once swirled through the city eventually faded, replaced by admiration for the man who rebuilt his foundation and his life with integrity. Emily had stayed by his side, not as his assistant anymore, but as his equal, his partner in purpose. Together, they launched the Open Hands Initiative, a network of mobile soup kitchens that now served thousands across the city. Every time one of the bright blue vans pulled into a neighborhood, children waved, families smiled, and volunteers shouted her name. Emily tried to hide from the attention, but David never let her. You deserve to be seen, he would say softly, and every time, it made her heart ache in the best way. On the anniversary of their first meeting, David invited her to a small event at the art gallery downtown. She arrived nervously, unsure of what to expect, dressed in a simple cream dress and holding a tiny bouquet of daisies, the only flowers she could afford back then. The gallery was softly lit, filled with familiar faces from the foundation, but something about tonight felt different. As she entered, she froze. Covering the walls were photographs and sketches from every project they had built together: the shelters, the soup kitchens, the children they had helped. In the center of the room hung a framed $10 bill, the same one she had given him that rainy day, now enclosed in glass, under a golden plaque that read, "The price of kindness, the gift that started it all." Tears welled in her eyes. David stepped forward from the crowd, wearing the same gentle smile that had disarmed her a lifetime ago. "Emily," he said softly, "you once gave away your last $10 without expecting anything in return. That act reminded me what wealth truly means. It is not about what we own. It is about what we give." She shook her head, overcome. "You did not have to do all this." "Yes, I did," he replied, his eyes never leaving hers. "Because this every life we changed, every smile we saw, it all began with you." The room went silent as he reached into his pocket and pulled out a small velvet box. Her breath caught as he opened it, revealing a delicate gold ring shaped like a tiny infinity symbol. "You taught me that kindness never ends," he said. "So, Emily Brooks, will you spend the rest of your life reminding me of that?" For a moment, she could not speak. Her hands trembled as she tried to blink back the tears. Finally, she whispered, "Yes, 1,000 times yes." Applause erupted, filling the room with warmth and laughter. David slipped the ring onto her finger, then drew her into an embrace that felt like home. Outside, rain began to fall softly against the glass roof, the same gentle rain that had brought them together a year ago. It was as if the world itself wanted to bless their story. Later that evening, as the guests began to leave, Emily stood by the window, watching the rain glisten on the streets below. David came up behind her, wrapping his arms around her shoulders. "Do you ever think about how it all started?" he asked. She smiled, leaning into him. "Every single day. A rainy afternoon, a cup of coffee, and a man who pretended to be poor." He laughed quietly. "And a woman who gave her last $10 to a stranger." She turned to face him, her voice tender. "Maybe that is the secret to life, David. Give, even when you have nothing left, and somehow, the universe gives back more than you can imagine." He kissed her forehead gently, his whisper barely audible. "Then I guess we are proof." The city lights shimmered beyond the glass. And in that moment, it was clear they had built something far greater than charity or success. They had built love, the kind that asks for nothing but gives everything in return. And that love, like the first $10, would keep multiplying forever.